A stranger zipped her wedding dress. Mafia boss whispered, "Your groom's not coming, little dove, I am." The cathedral was drenched in golden light. Candles flickered along the tall arches, casting shadows that danced across the marble floors. Outside, the sky had darkened with the threat of rain, and distant thunder rumbled over the city like a warning. Today was the day that Alara had been preparing for her entire life, or so she thought. Her reflection in the gilded mirror was perfect. Ivory gown, delicate lace trailing like mist, pearls woven into her dark hair. The dress hugged her waist and flared softly at her feet, a vision of elegance and innocence. Yet beneath the calm surface of her face, a storm brewed. Her hands trembled as she clasped the small bouquet of white roses, feeling the weight of what was about to happen. Alara had never truly known her groom. He was a man chosen for political alliance, a union meant to strengthen families and secure power. Love had no place in these arrangements. She had accepted it quietly, obediently, like a bird trapped in a gilded cage. But this morning, as she stood before the mirror, a flicker of unease ran through her. Something in the air felt wrong. A soft knock at the door pulled her from her thoughts. "Ilara," called the voice of her maid, trembling with excitement. "It is almost time. The ceremony," her words faltered, as if she too sensed the tension thickening the air. Ilara forced a smile. "Thank you," she said, her voice steady despite the thrum of fear in her chest. She set down the bouquet and adjusted the lace at her neckline. Nothing could happen now. The world outside was polished and perfect, and she had her part to play, or so she told herself. The knock came again, sharper this time, followed by a low voice she did not recognize. "Ilara!" The name hung in the air like a warning. She turned slowly, her heart catching in her throat. There, framed in the doorway, stood a man she had never seen before. His presence filled the room like smoke, dark, intoxicating, dangerous. He was tall, dressed in black tailored clothing that seemed to swallow the light, with eyes sharp and unreadable, yet somehow pulling her in. "I am here to help you," he said softly. His voice was low, deliberate, almost hypnotic. "But you must trust me, little dove." Ilara froze, unsure whether to flee or speak. "Who are you?" she whispered, her fingers tightening around the lace at her throat. "Call me Raven," he replied. "And your groom, he will not come today." Her heart leapt into her throat. "What do you mean, he is my—" "Not your choice," Raven interrupted gently. Then, in a movement both shocking and intimate, he stepped forward. His hands were steady as he reached for the zipper at the back of her gown. Alara gasped, her body stiffened. "You must come with me," he said, his breath brushing against her ear. "Now, if you stay, danger will reach you before the vows are finished." Alara's mind spun. The cathedral doors echoed with footsteps, the first notes of a wedding hymn trembling in the air. She should have been preparing to walk down the aisle. Instead, a stranger, a man whose presence made the air feel alive and dangerous, was zipping up her wedding dress and whispering words that turned her world upside down. Her instincts screamed at her to flee, to escape the room and the entire life she had known. Yet against her better judgment, something in his eyes, dark, unwavering, protective, made her pause. She felt a pull she could not name. Fear, certainly, but also the faintest spark of longing. The cathedral's bells tolled, echoing through the city with authority and grace. Outside, the rain began to fall, a soft patter at first, then stronger, as if the heavens themselves were celebrating or mourning her choice. Raven stepped closer. "There is no time to explain," he murmured. "If you follow me, you will live. If you stay, I cannot promise anything." The sound of her would-be groom's entourage approaching broke the moment. Shouts rang out, doors opening and closing with hurried urgency. Alara knew, in that instant, that this stranger was her only chance. Her hand shook as she reached out to him, trembling not just with fear but with something deeper, something she had never allowed herself to feel before. As she stepped forward, the room blurred. The sound of the hymn faded. replaced by the thrum of her own heartbeat and the rush of adrenaline that made her senses sharper, clearer. Raven guided her through hidden corridors she had never known existed in the cathedral, passages meant for service, for escape, for secrets. The air smelled of old wood and wax, of rain seeping through cracks in the stone. What are you?" she asked breathlessly, trying to catch her bearings as he led her down narrow stairs. "Someone who will protect you," he said simply. Then his voice softened, almost a whisper of confession. "Someone who might care more than he should." The words struck her like lightning. She had not expected him to speak of care, not in this world of power and duty, where everyone wore masks and played roles. And yet here he was, breaking every rule she had ever known. They emerged into the courtyard, drenched in shadow and rain. The storm had grown fierce, lightning cutting across the sky in white jagged lines, thunder shaking the ground beneath their feet. The groom's men had arrived too, voices raised in confusion and anger. They did not see Alara. Only Raven's sharp eyes scanned the courtyard, and with a motion both swift and silent, he pulled her behind a marble column. "You cannot hide forever," she whispered, shivering from the cold and fear. "I do not intend to," he said, his eyes dark and unwavering. "I intend to fight, and you must trust me. Trust." The word felt impossible. Yet something in the way he moved, so confident and sure, stirred something deep within her, a mixture of awe, fear, and desire. She realized with a pang that she had never felt truly alive until this moment, never truly seen the world beyond the cage she had lived in. A sudden shout split the air and Alara's blood froze. Figures emerged from the shadowed doorway, men in fine suits, weapons glinting faintly in the stormlight. Her would-be groom was nowhere to be seen. Raven's expression hardened and a deadly calm replaced the hypnotic allure she had felt moments before. "Stay close," he ordered, placing a protective hand on her shoulder. "Do not speak. Do not move unless I tell you." Alara nodded, her mind racing, heart pounding, every nerve alive with fear and excitement. She had no idea what had brought her here. Why this man? Why now? But she knew, deep in her soul, that her life would never be the same. Raven moved like a shadow through the courtyard, silent and precise. He intercepted the men, his presence alone commanding attention, a mixture of fear and respect rippling through their ranks. His movements were graceful, almost unnatural, yet undeniably human. There was power in every gesture, in every glance. Alara watched, awestruck, as the man who had whisked her from her wedding gown became a figure of authority and danger. She felt both terrified and exhilarated. Here in the storm and the chaos, she sensed something she had never known before, the thrilling possibility of choice. The men hesitated, uncertain of their next move. Raven's gaze swept over them, sharp and precise. "Leave," he said, voice low and steady. "Before it is too late." A tense silence followed. The storm roared above them, rain striking the courtyard with a deafening rhythm. Then, slowly, the men retreated, disappearing into the shadows like whispers of a world Alara had once known but would never enter again. When the last figure had vanished, Raven turned to her. His eyes softened, almost imperceptibly, revealing a flicker of emotion beneath the darkness. "You are safe for now," he said. His hand lingered near hers, not touching, yet the warmth of his presence was undeniable. "But the world will not stay quiet for long. You must come with me, little dove. There is much you do not know, and danger will follow if we linger." Alara swallowed hard, the words heavy with meaning. She did not understand everything, not yet, but she felt the undeniable truth of them in her bones. Her life had changed forever. She nodded, allowing him to guide her into the shadowed streets beyond the cathedral. Rain plastered her hair to her cheeks, and the night seemed darker, alive with unseen eyes and whispered threats. And yet, in Raven's presence, in the rapid beating of her heart and the thrill of the unknown, she felt an intoxicating freedom she had never known. As they disappeared into the storm, the cathedral behind them stood silent, its golden light swallowed by shadows. The bells tolled, echoing across the city, marking not a wedding, but the beginning of something new, something dangerous, intoxicating, and impossible to ignore. And then from the darkness, a voice whispered close to her ear, soft but dangerous. "Little dove, this is only the beginning." Alara shivered, not entirely from the cold. The rain poured in sheets as Raven led Alara through winding alleys of the city. The streets were empty, save for the occasional flicker of lamplight reflecting off puddles. Every sound, the slap of water against stone, the distant clap of thunder, seemed louder in the night, sharper, as if the world itself were holding its breath. Alara clung to the edge of her veil, wet and clinging to her shoulders as she followed him silently. Her heart still raced from the chaos of the cathedral, and her mind whirled with questions. Who was he? Why had he saved her? And most urgently, why did the boldness in his eyes make her feel both terrified and strangely alive? Raven led her through a series of narrow passageways she had never seen before, hidden doors tucked into plain walls, steps descending into darkness. Finally, they arrived at a building that seemed abandoned from the outside, its windows dark, its walls aged and weathered. But as Raven opened the door, a warm glow spilled out, and the faint scent of burning candles and rich wood filled her senses. Inside, the room was unexpectedly comfortable. Soft rugs covered the floor, shelves lined the walls with books and artifacts, and low lanterns cast a gentle, golden light. Alara glanced around, her eyes wide. "Where are we?" she asked. Raven closed the door behind them, bolting it securely. "A safe place," he said simply. "For now, you cannot return to your world, not yet, not until you understand what is coming." Alara's mind raced. Understand what? He stepped closer, his eyes searching hers as though he were weighing how much to reveal. "The man you were to marry, he is not what he seemed. He was working with those who would harm you and your family. I intervened because you were in danger. Because you are worth protecting." Her stomach twisted. "Protecting me, but you don't even know me." "I know enough," Raven said, his tone softening slightly. "I know you deserve more than a life chosen for you by others, and I know I cannot allow harm to come to you." Alara stared at him, her mind struggling to keep up with the reality of the situation. A stranger, a man of danger and power, had saved her from a wedding she no longer wanted, from a groom whose intentions were anything but honorable. She felt a flicker of gratitude and fear. And then, impossibly, a spark of curiosity. You're not like anyone I've ever met," she admitted, her voice trembling. Raven allowed himself a faint smile, brief and fleeting, as if the words were dangerous for him to express. "Nor are you," he replied, almost a whisper. They sat in silence for a few moments, the storm outside hammering against the walls. Alara's thoughts swirled. She had been taught to obey, to be quiet, to follow rules. And yet, here she was, following a man whose very presence made her feel alive, aware, unbound. "Do you trust me?" Raven asked suddenly, his gaze piercing. The question made her startle. Trust. It was a word heavy with meaning, impossible to offer lightly. But as she looked at him, the strength in his stance, the honesty in his eyes, something inside her stirred. Slowly, almost against her better judgment, she nodded. I will try." "Good," he said simply. "You must if you wish to survive." For the next few hours, Raven guided her through his world. They moved silently through the city, avoiding the main streets, slipping past shadowed corners where danger might lurk. He showed her how to move without being seen, how to listen for signs of pursuit, how to trust her instincts. At first, Alara stumbled, frightened and clumsy, but she quickly realized that the skills he taught her were empowering, awakening a confidence she had never known. "You are stronger than you think," Raven said, observing her as she ducked behind a doorway to avoid a passing patrol. "You have the courage. You just need to see it in yourself." Alara flushed, both embarrassed and pleased by his words. I never thought of myself that way," she admitted. "Few do," he said. until someone shows them who they truly are. As they moved deeper into the alleys, Alara began to notice the city in a way she never had before. The rooftops gleamed with wet tiles, reflections of lightning dancing across their surfaces. The wind carried the scent of rain, of damp earth, of the faint smoke from chimneys. The city felt alive, dangerous, and beautiful all at once. And standing beside Raven, she felt that same mix within herself: fear and exhilaration, caution and curiosity, longing and fascination. Hours passed, and finally they reached a tall building nestled in the heart of the old district. The doors opened to a room filled with shadows and flickering candlelight, much like the first refuge. But this space was larger, more fortified, walls lined with shelves, heavy curtains covering the windows, and faint traces of magical symbols carved into the wood. "This will be your sanctuary for now," Raven said, his voice firm but gentle. "You will be safe here. No one will find you." Alara looked around, overwhelmed. "Safe, but for how long?" Raven hesitated, his gaze darkening. "For as long as it takes. But know this: danger will come, whether we are ready or not. You must learn to trust not only me but yourself." The night grew deep, and the storm outside began to wane, leaving the streets glistening and silent. Raven led her to a small chamber within the building, a room warm and softly lit, with blankets neatly arranged and a simple meal prepared. "You should rest," he said. "Tomorrow we begin preparing for what is coming. You will need strength." Alara hesitated, then nodded, her body weary from the night's chaos. She sat on the edge of the bed, watching him as he moved quietly about the room. There was something both terrifying and comforting about him: his strength, his confidence, his aura of danger. And yet in moments like this, alone with her, she glimpsed the faintest hint of gentleness beneath it all. "I thank you," she whispered finally, "for saving me, for everything." Raven paused, meeting her gaze. "I do not expect thanks," he said quietly. "You will see soon enough that your life is worth more than any expression of gratitude. But you should know this: I care more than I should." The words sent a shiver down her spine. She looked away, unsure what to do with the rush of emotion that swept through her. She had never been spoken to like this, never been seen like this. Her heart ached with longing, confusion, and something dangerous: desire. The night passed slowly, filled with uneasy silence. Alara lay awake, listening to the wind brushing against the windows, thinking of the events that had brought her here. She could still see the cathedral, still feel the brush of her gown, still hear the echo of the bells. And yet she also felt the presence of Raven, near but untouchable, like a shadow she could not escape, yet did not wish to. Morning came with a pale light, casting silver over the rain-soaked city. Raven was already awake, standing by the window, watching the streets with a guarded expression. "You must be ready," he said without turning. "Today will not be easy." Alara rose, swallowing hard. She had never known what courage truly felt like until now. I will try," she said, her voice steadier than she expected. Raven finally turned to her, his gaze sharp and unwavering. "Good, because the world you knew, the life you thought you would have, it is gone. And you are about to step into a place where every choice will matter, where danger will test you, and where your heart will be challenged in ways you cannot imagine." Alara felt her pulse quicken. She did not fully understand him, did not fully understand herself, but she knew one thing: she was no longer the girl waiting for a life decided by others. She was alive, fully, dangerously alive, in the hands of a man she did not yet trust completely, yet could not stop thinking about. Raven handed her a cloak, his fingers brushing hers briefly. A spark traveled along her skin, impossible to ignore. "Stay close," he said simply. "And trust me, even when it seems impossible, even when fear overwhelms you, trust me." Alara nodded, pulling the cloak tightly around her shoulders. Her eyes met his, and for a moment neither spoke. In that silence the storm outside seemed distant, almost peaceful, but the tension between them thrummed like a living thing. Then a sudden noise cut through the quiet, a faint shuffle, almost imperceptible. Raven's head snapped toward the door, his body taut like a drawn bow. "They've found us," he whispered, moving swiftly to the shadows, hand reaching for Alara. Her breath caught. She had survived the cathedral, the storm, the unknown city, but now the true danger was closing in. And as they prepared to face it together, a truth crystallized in her mind. She could not imagine facing it with anyone else. Raven's eyes met hers, sharp and commanding, yet softer than she expected. "Hold on, little dove," he said. "We are not finished yet." And with that the door burst open, and figures emerged from the shadows, their intentions clear and deadly. Alara felt her world tilt once more, heart pounding, adrenaline coursing. But this time she would not be powerless. She was alive, alert and ready. The first rays of dawn crept through the tall windows, painting the room in pale gold. Outside, the city shimmered after the storm, wet streets gleaming like polished silver. Inside, the air was thick with tension, still carrying the echo of last night's chaos. Alara sat on the edge of the bed, her hands wrapped tightly around her knees. The events of the cathedral and the night that followed still felt unreal. A stranger had saved her, led her into the shadows, and now, somehow, she was caught between fear and fascination, longing and caution. Raven stood by the window, his silhouette strong and unyielding. Even in the soft morning light, he radiated a quiet power, a presence that demanded attention without effort. He turned to her slowly, as if aware of the thoughts spinning in her mind. "There is no time to linger," he said, voice calm but firm. "You must understand what your life has become and what you must do to survive." Alara nodded. I want to understand, but I'm afraid." "You should be," Raven replied softly. "Fear keeps you alive. It reminds you to pay attention. But courage keeps you moving forward when the world threatens to crush you." She swallowed hard. "And what about you?" she asked quietly. "Aren't you afraid?" Raven's expression softened almost imperceptibly. "Afraid of losing someone I care about," he admitted. His gaze met hers, dark and unwavering. "But I cannot allow fear to stop me. Not now, not with you." The words stirred something deep in Alara. Her heart quickened. She had been trained to obey, to stay within the lines set by others, but here, with him, she felt alive in a way she had never known. A dangerous, thrilling kind of life that pulled her toward him even as reason warned her to run. Raven led her down a hidden staircase, deeper into the heart of the building. They emerged in a large hall, the walls lined with shelves of books, artifacts, and objects she could not recognize. The space smelled of old wood, leather, and candle wax. "This is my domain," Raven said, sweeping his hand across the room. "A place where few are allowed and fewer survive." Alara's eyes widened. "Your domain," she echoed. What is this place?" "It is a safe house, yes," he replied, "but it is also a place of preparation. You will need strength, knowledge, and skill if you wish to survive the world you are now a part of." Alara's stomach twisted. She had never imagined a life like this, one where danger and power intertwined, where survival depended on cunning and courage rather than obedience and decorum. And yet, a part of her, an unspoken, curious part, thrilled at the idea. Raven guided her to a table covered with maps, documents, and strange symbols. "You need to understand the forces you are facing," he explained. "The man you were to marry is connected to powerful enemies, men who will not hesitate to use you as a pawn. I saved you because you are important, little dove, more important than you realize." Alara stared at the maps and symbols, her mind spinning. I don't understand any of this." "You will," Raven said patiently. "You must learn. Because soon you will need to make choices that will affect not only your life but the lives of those around you. And you must be ready." He began teaching her, slowly at first, how to read signs of danger, how to move silently, how to trust her instincts. He taught her about loyalty, about alliances, about the delicate balance of power in the city's underworld. At first, Alara stumbled, unsure of herself. She had spent her life following rules, not making them. But as Raven guided her, she began to see herself differently. She was clever, she was capable, and for the first time she realized that strength did not come from obedience. It came from courage, resourcefulness, and the willingness to act when others hesitated. "You are stronger than you think," Raven said, observing her as she practiced moving silently across the hall. "You have the courage, you just need to see it in yourself." Alara flushed, both embarrassed and pleased. I never thought of myself that way," she admitted. "Few do," he replied, "until someone shows them who they truly are." Their training continued for hours, and in those moments the tension between them grew. Each glance, each touch, each shared word was charged with unspoken meaning. They were teacher and student, protector and protected, but the unspoken connection between them deepened, a thread that neither could ignore. By late afternoon, they paused, both breathing heavily from exertion. Alara sat on a low bench, trying to steady her racing heart. Raven leaned against the wall, watching her. "You've done well," he said, voice low. "Better than most who have trained here for months." Alara looked up at him, her chest rising and falling. I couldn't have done it without you," she admitted. Raven's eyes softened just for a moment. "And yet, it is not me you will rely on in the end. It will be yourself. Never forget that, little dove." The hours passed, and the sky outside darkened with approaching night. Raven moved to the window, scanning the streets below. Alara noticed the change in his demeanor, the ease of command, the sharpness of attention. He was not just strong, he was calculated, precise, dangerous. And yet, in moments like this, alone with her, he seemed almost human. A sudden noise broke the quiet, the soft click of a door, a shadow moving in the corner. Raven's body tensed instantly. "They've come," he whispered, moving to her side. Alara's heart leapt. "Who?" "Enemies," he replied, his hand resting lightly on her shoulder. "Someone from my past, someone who knows both of us could be in danger." They moved quickly, stepping through hidden corridors and secret passages that Alara had never noticed before. She followed him, her fear tempered by the knowledge that he would not let anything happen to her. And yet, a part of her knew that survival depended on more than his protection. She would need to act, to think, to fight. They emerged into a hidden courtyard, moonlight filtering through the clouds. Figures approached from the shadows, careful and deliberate, their intent unmistakable. Raven's eyes darkened. "Stay close," he ordered. "Do exactly as I say." Alara's pulse raced. She had survived the cathedral, the storm, and the night of escape. But now the threat was closer, sharper, more immediate. She realized that her courage, her skills, and her trust in Raven would all be tested. The first figure stepped forward, a tall man in dark clothing. His eyes were cold, calculating. "Raven," he said, voice smooth and threatening, "you should not have interfered. She belongs to others." Raven's stance shifted, protective and commanding. "She belongs to no one but herself," he said. His voice was low, but every word carried power. "Leave, or you will regret it." The man laughed, a low, dangerous sound. "You are no longer the only one with power in this city. You cannot protect her forever." Raven's gaze hardened. "Try me." The tension exploded in a heartbeat. Shadows shifted, movements quick and precise. Alara's mind raced, remembering the lessons he had taught her. She ducked instinctively behind a column, heart pounding, senses alert. Raven moved with deadly grace, intercepting each threat with calm precision. His presence was magnetic, terrifying and protective all at once. Every move he made spoke of skill, experience, and a determination to protect Alara at any cost. In the chaos, Alara realized something. She was not powerless. She had learned to trust her instincts, to move silently, to act with awareness. She stepped from her hiding place, helping Raven deflect a strike, surprising even herself with her courage. For a moment, the world seemed suspended between fear and exhilaration. Alara and Raven were no longer teacher and student, protector and protected. They were a team, moving in unison against the threat. Finally, the intruders retreated, realizing they could not overcome the pair. Raven stood tall, his chest heaving slightly, eyes scanning the courtyard for any sign of return. Alara approached him, trembling from adrenaline and the rush of survival. We did it," she said, voice shaking. Raven looked at her, and for the first time he allowed a small, almost imperceptible smile. "Yes," he said, "but this is only the beginning. You must be ready for what comes next. The world we face is dangerous, and there are more challenges ahead." Alara nodded, understanding that she was no longer the same girl who had clung to a life of rules and obedience. She was stronger, braver, and more aware of the power within her. Raven stepped closer, the air between them charged with unspoken tension. "And you must also be prepared for the truths you will learn about me," he said softly. "I am not only your protector, little dove. I am a man with secrets, with burdens, with shadows you cannot yet imagine. And yet, I will not let harm come to you, no matter the cost." Alara's breath caught. I want to know," she whispered. Raven's eyes softened just slightly. "Soon," he promised, "but first you must survive." And in that moment, Alara understood fully. The path ahead would test them both, her courage, his secrets, their trust, and the delicate thread of attraction that had begun to weave between them. The moonlight fell on their faces, shadows and light dancing together, mirroring the turmoil and longing inside each of them. And as they stood together, the distant echo of footsteps reached their ears, faint but unmistakable. "They're coming," Raven said, voice low and urgent. Alara's pulse quickened. She knew that the challenges of this night were far from over, and that their bond, fragile, electric, and full of unspoken desire, would be tested in ways she could not yet imagine. And in the distance, a whisper of movement hinted that the true danger had only just begun. The night was darker than ever, the city below cloaked in mist and shadows. Alara and Raven stood at the edge of the courtyard, their bodies tense, every sense alert. The footsteps had grown louder, the threat approaching with relentless precision. Alara's heart pounded, but this time it was not just fear, it was determination. She had survived storms, betrayal, and chaos, and she was no longer the girl who trembled at every sound. She was a part of Raven's world now, a world of danger, power, and loyalty, and she had learned to fight alongside him. "They're close," Raven whispered, his eyes scanning the shadows. "We need a plan." Alara nodded, gripping the edge of her cloak tightly. "Then let's make one," she said. Her voice was steady, betraying none of the fear that still throbbed in her chest. Raven studied her, a mixture of admiration and surprise flickering across his face. "You have changed," he said softly. "You are stronger than I imagined. And you must trust yourself tonight more than ever." "I do," she replied, and she meant it. Together they moved through hidden passages, winding toward the rooftop of the building. From above, the city sprawled beneath them, wet streets reflecting moonlight, empty but for the distant glow of lanterns. Raven's fingers brushed hers briefly, a silent reassurance, a tether of warmth amidst the cold tension of the night. Below, the intruders were assembling. Figures in black, careful and deliberate, moving like shadows through the streets. Alara watched them, her mind racing. She remembered the lessons Raven had taught her, their movements, their intentions, the signs that told when danger was near. "They will attack in minutes," Raven said, voice low. "We must be ready." Alara nodded. Her pulse thrummed in her ears, but there was no fear in her eyes, only focus. She had learned to survive, to act, to anticipate, and she would. Raven's hand found hers, their fingers entwining. "Stay close," he whispered. "Trust me." They crouched behind the ledge, waiting. The figures below paused, scanning the streets, unaware of the pair above. And then, with a sudden rush, the first of them moved forward, stepping into a trap they could not see. Raven acted instantly, precise, his movements fluid and deadly. Alara followed, moving as he had trained her, her instincts sharp, her focus absolute. The courtyard erupted into a flurry of motion. Shadows clashed, threats and defenses colliding in a deadly dance. But Alara did not falter. She moved beside Raven, anticipating his actions, covering his flanks, helping to turn the tide. Her heart raced, not with fear this time, but with exhilaration, with the knowledge that she could face this world and survive. Raven fought with a mixture of skill and instinct, his eyes never leaving Alara. Every strike he deflected, every movement he made protected her. And yet he allowed her space to act, to prove her courage, to become more than just someone he protected. Minutes passed like hours, the clash continuing under the pale moonlight. And then, finally, the last of the intruders retreated, disappearing into the shadows from whence they came. Raven stood tall, chest heaving, eyes scanning for any sign of return. Alara approached him, breathless, her body trembling from the rush of adrenaline. We did it," she said softly, her voice a mixture of awe and relief. Raven's expression softened, and for a moment the darkness around him seemed to lift. "Yes," he said, "but this is only the beginning. You must remember that strength, courage, and trust are your allies. And above all, loyalty and love can be your greatest weapons." Alara looked at him, understanding dawning in her eyes. She had followed him through fear, chaos, and danger, and now she understood the depth of the bond they had forged. It was more than trust. It was respect, admiration, and something deeper, a connection neither of them could deny. Raven stepped closer, his hand brushing her cheek gently. "You are remarkable," he whispered. "Braver than anyone I have known, and stronger than you realize. I cannot lose you, little dove." Alara's heart ached, but she smiled softly. "You won't," she said, her voice steady. "Not while I can stand beside you." They stood in silence, the storm of battle behind them, the city beneath them, and for the first time the world seemed still, almost peaceful. And yet they knew it was temporary. Danger would always exist in this world, but they had faced it together and survived. Raven's eyes darkened, a shadow passing over his features. "There is more you must know," he said quietly. "About me, about the life I lead, about the burdens I carry." Alara nodded, her curiosity and trust intertwined. "I'm ready," she said. Raven took a deep breath, the weight of his secrets pressing on him. "I am a man bound by power and darkness. My family, my enemies, my past, they are all tied to forces that you cannot yet imagine. And there is a curse, a shadow over my life. If I allow myself to love, someone I care for could be in danger." Alara's breath caught, but she did not step back. "Then we face it together," she said simply. "If you trust me, I will trust you. We are stronger together." Raven studied her, his gaze searching, weighing, and finally, a small, almost imperceptible smile touched his lips. "Yes," he said, "we are stronger together." He reached for her hand, holding it tightly, a silent promise of protection and partnership. And in that touch, Alara felt the depth of their connection, the danger, the desire, the unspoken affection that had grown between them. The city lay quiet below, but the night was far from over. Raven led her to a balcony overlooking the streets, the wind whipping around them, the distant glow of lanterns illuminating the mist. "Tonight was only the first test," he said, voice low and commanding. "There are more challenges ahead. But no matter what comes, I will protect you, and you will survive, together." Alara nodded, her heart full. She had faced fear, danger, and uncertainty, and had emerged stronger, braver, and more aware of the power within herself. And she had found someone who believed in her, who fought for her, who challenged her to be more than she ever imagined. Raven leaned closer, their faces inches apart. "This world is dangerous," he whispered. "But in your eyes, I see a light I thought I had lost long ago." Alara smiled softly. "Then we will face it together," she said. The wind carried their words across the city, a promise of loyalty, courage, and love. And for the first time since the chaos began, Alara felt a sense of peace. The world was still dangerous, still filled with shadows, but she was no longer alone. She was alive, fully and completely, standing beside the man who had saved her and shown her the strength she never knew she had. As they stood together, hand in hand, the first light of dawn began to touch the city, painting the streets in soft gold and silver. The storm had passed, leaving the world washed clean and renewed. And in that moment, Alara knew that whatever challenges awaited them, they would face them together, stronger and braver than ever before. Raven's hand brushed hers again, a silent promise, a tether of warmth and protection. "Little dove," he whispered, his voice filled with emotion, "this is only the beginning, but with you I am ready for anything." Alara smiled, leaning into him, her heart full. "And I am ready too," she said. For the first time, they stood not as predator and prey, teacher and student, protector and protected. They stood as equals, bound by trust, courage, and the undeniable connection of two hearts that had found each other in the midst of chaos. The city below stirred with life, the sun rising slowly over the horizon, promising a new day, a new beginning. And for Alara and Raven, that day was theirs to face, together, unbroken and stronger than the shadows that had once threatened to consume them. They turned from the balcony, the wind whipping through their hair, hearts aligned, ready for the future. And though the world was still filled with dangers, Alara knew that with Raven by her side, she could face anything, and love could flourish even in the darkest shadows. And as the sun rose fully, the city gleamed like silver, a new day beginning, not just for the streets and rooftops, but for two hearts that had survived, learned, and transformed together.